I only made one mistake. My husband dumped me after 10 years for one night stand with a coworker. Hey Reddit, using a throwaway account here because my usual one is known and followed by friends and family. We all mess up, right? I did, you did. It's part of being human. But why can't my husband forgive me for a one-time slip-up? It's killing me. We've been married for 10 years and he's calling it quits just because I had a fling with a coworker. It doesn't make sense, and I'm hurting bad. I know you're probably wondering how that happened, so I guess backstory first. My name is Lena, and I am a 35-year-old woman. I'm married to Raymond, a 36-year-old man. We live in the United States. I'm going to call my coworker Jeff for the duration of the story for the sake of privacy. We've been married for about 10 years now. Let's rewind a bit first. Raymond and I first met at a college party where we hit it off. After some dates, we decided to make it official and moved in together. Fast forward 3 years and we tied the knot. Raymond worked from home while I worked in an office. But funny enough, Raymond was pulling in about 4 times what I was, all from the comfort of our home, while I was clocking in at the office. Talk about a salary gap, right? LOL. Up until when I made my mistake, life had been a breeze. Our sex life was pretty active. When tackling bills and chores, the income gap between Raymond and me led to an 80-20 split for bills. He shouldered 80% and I covered 20%. As for chores, given Raymond's more flexible schedule working from home, the division leaned towards 70-30, with him taking on 70% and me handling 30%. It might sound a bit lopsided, but it played into my favor. Raymond insisted on this arrangement, wanting me to have ample rest and extra spending money. Also, there were no little ones running around just yet, but we were gearing up to give parenthood a shot in about a year. Either ways, about a month back, a fresh face joined the office. And you know, it's not uncommon for new folks to pop in and out. People switch jobs, offices shuffle, the usual drill. But this time was a bit different. This new coworker turned heads. Like, really turned heads. The whole office was buzzing about their good looks. I found myself crushing on this new colleague right from the get-go. But honestly, I thought it was just a mild crush. You know, the kind that fades away with time. Ignoring the crush seemed like the logical move. But let me tell you, it was a Herculean task. This coworker, not only good-looking but also exuding friendliness, went the extra mile in the friendliness department, especially with me. I attempted the classic avoidance strategy, but truth be told, it was like trying to dodge raindrops. Almost impossible. Instead of fading, the crush decided to play on expert mode, growing stronger with each passing day. Honestly, it got to a point where it was messing with my head. And then, as if the universe wasn't on my side, Jeff wanted a transfer to my office. When I heard that, talk about shockwaves. This was the person I was actively trying to dodge. And yet, here they were, making a beeline to get closer to me. Sadly enough, my husband, sharp as a tack, noticed I was kind of pulling away. No secrets there, but instead of letting things slide, he went all out to make up for it. Like he could sense things changing and wanted to fix it, you know? He wasn't having any of that distance creeping in, so he started doing things. Little surprises, more hangout time. I felt this heavy guilt weighing me down. On one side, there was my husband, trying his best to keep our connection tight. And there I am, crushing on some young coworker. The guilt gnawed at me. So I made a promise to myself. No more wandering eyes, no more letting dumb crushes mess with what I've got with my husband. But Jeff just wouldn't let up. He started bringing me coffee all the time, stopping by to chat more with me than anyone else. It got pretty obvious, to be honest. Then came the compliments, not just on my work, but on how I looked and what I wore. Can't lie, it felt nice. In the middle of all my confusion, his attention became like this boost of confidence. He always delivered the compliments with a charming smile, and it turned into a kind of craving for more. I started questioning myself. Was it really so bad to enjoy a bit of attention? I mean, it's just harmless, right? But deep down, I knew things were getting a bit blurry. The line between friendly and maybe not so friendly was fading, but I was starting not to care. Work, which used to be all about getting stuff done, started to become a happy place for me just because of him. Every chat with him left me kinda jittery but strangely excited. And as his attention kept coming, I found myself getting caught up in this emotional mess, trying to balance my commitment to my marriage and the buzz of this newfound attention. His actions started to mess with my everyday life. I couldn't stop thinking about our interactions, replaying them in my head. It was like this secret compartment opened up, and I couldn't really control it. And then one day, picture this. I'm leaving work, minding my own business, and bam! There's Jeff, casually chilling next to my car. Caught me off guard, gotta admit, but being the curious cat I am, I walked over. He shoots me that smile. You know, the one that feels like 100 butterflies doing somersaults in your stomach? Yeah, that one. Then he surprises me, says he's got something on his mind, something he wants to chat about. And get this, he's actually asking if it's cool to message me after work. Flattered much? Well, guilty as charged, I said yes. I got back home, and I was burning with curiosity about what Jeff wanted to talk about. My phone practically became an extension of my hand. I was checking it every few minutes. My curiosity got so thick even my hubby noticed. However, I quickly deflected and told him I was waiting for my best friend's text. Then, surprisingly, my husband suggests a random date night since I got off work early. I'm like, sure, why not? We hit up a nice dinner spot, Netflix, and chill for a bit, and call it a night. Just as I'm about to doze off, bingo. The coworker's message finally pops up. My excitement was so crazy that I almost dropped my phone, LOL. I had a chat with Jeff, the usual how's it going stuff. He throws me a curveball, however, and he said something was bugging him. I was thinking, did I annoy him or what? But then again, he's usually the one giving me the extra attention. So I'm like, spill the beans, what's eating at you? And bam, he hits me with it. He's seriously into me. Talk about blindsided. I'm left speechless and caught off guard. I shoot back with the obvious, does he know I'm married? He does, and he said that just makes the whole thing even more confusing for him. He spills that he really, really likes me, but says he gets it if I want to cut ties. I was feeling like I got hit by a truck. Here I was, relentlessly crushing on him, thinking he would never like someone like me, and shocking enough, he likes me. I tell him I need time to process, so I ask for a few days. Then I bail offline. My emotions are all over the place. Shock, confusion, and a hint of flattery. Another thing that surprises me is the fact that our workplace isn't a tiny shop, and Jeff is like the office heartthrob. Everyone's fave and easy on the eyes. Plenty of girls, single ones too, are crushing on him. So, the big question hanging in the air? Why me? Out of the whole bunch, why single me out, especially when you know I'm married? I was all kinds of confused, seriously lost in this mess. After dragging myself to bed, I decided to let it marinate for a few days, hoping some clarity would magically appear. Surprise, surprise, things just got messier. Instead of the attraction fading, it cranked up a notch. I felt like I was stuck in some emotional maze. I knew I had to squash this attraction, but how the heck do you do that? Looking back, it hits me that I kind of set myself up for this whole mess. When he started with the niceness, I could have just put my foot down and told him to knock it off. I mean, he probably would have listened, or I could have gone the official route and reported it to HR, they'd handle it. But no, I went the selfish route, soaking up the attention like it was some kind of personal spotlight. I enjoyed that it made the other girls at work a bit green-eyed. Then, when he dropped the bomb about liking me, I had a chance to shut it down right then and there. All I had to do was tell him to back off because, hello, I'm married. He might have listened, but nope. I pulled a move straight out of a teenage romance movie. Instead of shutting it down, I asked for a few days to think it over. Like, seriously? I've got to give the guy credit. He at least gave me those few days to ponder. The coffee deliveries kept coming, the smiles persisted, but hey, at least he eased up on the clinginess. It was like he was on standby, waiting for my decision, but not as in-your-face as before. I mulled over this whole situation for days, to the point where my husband couldn't help but notice I was in my head about something. Of course, I couldn't spill the beans to him, so I did what any person in a tight spot would, deflected and told a little white lie. But then, out of the blue, I had this wild idea. Call it crazy, call it absurd, but here it is. I somehow convinced myself that the reason I was so attracted to Jeff was because, well, I hadn't done anything with him. Like, really? My genius deduction was that if I just slept with him, the attraction would fizzle out and I'd move on with my life. Now, looking back, I can't believe how downright foolish that plan was. At the time, though, I thought I had it all figured out, a foolproof strategy. Keep it hush-hush from my husband, kiss the crush goodbye, and focus on fixing up the marriage. Talk about a seriously misguided train of thought. It's crystal clear now, that idea was beyond stupid. But back in the moment, it felt like some genius master plan. Looking back, I can't believe how ridiculously dumb I was. The reality is, I was just so damn attracted to Jeff that I was practically searching for an excuse to act on it. So what did I do? Well, brace yourself for the cringe. I messaged Jeff and was pretty straightforward with him. I told him I'd pondered it for a bit, and nope, I wasn't leaving my husband because I loved him very much and wanted to stay with him. And then, I proposed the brilliant idea of I and the coworker having something on the side. And guess what? Jeff's response? Pure enthusiasm. He didn't expect me to ditch my husband, but he was thrilled that I wanted him. Yeah, it's as cringeworthy as it sounds. I made sure I laid it out straight for him, no strings attached, just a one-night stand. Shockingly, he was on board. I mean, who wouldn't be, right? So Jeff and I planned everything. The rendezvous was scheduled at his place in 2 days, a Friday. In my twisted logic, it seemed like a genius plan. And honestly, at that moment, I was feeling this mix of happiness and eagerness. My crush on this guy was like a stubborn weed, but I reminded myself that the love for my husband was equally strong. All I wanted was for this crush to be overdone and dusted. It was time to put an end to it, so I could then focus on my marriage. The next day, I woke up buzzing with excitement. Friday couldn't come soon enough. I got ready for work. I was like a ball of anticipation, even though I noticed my husband was in a foul mood. I brushed it off, not giving it much thought. Once at work, Jeff was extra nice to me, going the extra mile by treating me to coffee and lunch. Honestly, I felt very guilty, but I was too caught up in the excitement to let it bother me. Friday finally rolled around, and sleep was basically a no-show for me. As I got ready for work, I noticed my husband was in an extra foul mood. Yet again, I brushed it off, figuring he must have had some work troubles on his plate. In hindsight, I can't believe how insensitive I was. Instead of checking in and asking what was up, I just carried on, oblivious to his feelings. My mind was too wrapped up in the excitement of what I was about to do. Once at work, Jeff was back at it. Extra nice, coffee, lunch, the whole shebang. The guilt was there in the background, but honestly, I was too deep into my own thrill to care about anything else. Looking back now, it's like a cringeworthy movie scene where I watch the main character, which is me, make all the wrong choices. Once work was done, me and the coworker decided to be sneaky about it. We hung back until most of our colleagues had hit the road, so nobody would catch on to us leaving together. We decided that we would drive separate cars. He would be at the front while I would drive behind him, keeping things low-key to dodge any curious looks from our coworkers and any potential sightings from anybody that knew me. We made it to his place without a hitch. I slipped in unnoticed. That was a big relief. For a moment, I thought I might actually pull this off smoothly. We settled in, caught a movie, had some food, and then things got more intimate. And let me tell you, it was mind-blowing, like next-level amazing. Part of it, I think, was just the built-up desire for this coworker. It was fantastic. After we wrapped it up, we decided to chill and watch another movie. During the movie, I spotted a text from my husband asking if I was done. It caught me off guard, but then I figured he was just checking if I finished work. I guessed he might have a date night planned, explaining his question. I replied that I still had a few hours left, but he was cool with it and said he'd be waiting for me. After the movie, I figured it was time to head out. Jeff walked me to my car. As it was an unfamiliar neighborhood, he assured me that it was safe, as I probably didn't know anyone around, and that was true. We chatted on the way to the car, and I made it clear that I didn't want our workplace interactions to get awkward because of this one-night stand. He agreed, saying he still wanted us to be friends. I emphasized that this wouldn't be a repeat, and he was cool with whatever I decided. I drove home and used the spare key since my husband wasn't there. Figured he had gone out for something. I did the usual routine, ate, showered, changed, and waited for my husband. Jeff sent me a message and we chatted for a bit. We even discussed the intimacy, reflecting on how intense it had been. When my husband finally arrived, he mentioned that he had been hanging out at his friend's. He had dinner alone since I'd already eaten. Then we watched TV and chatted before hitting the hay. Overall, a pretty regular night. The next morning, I woke up a bit later than usual and had to rush to get ready. I noticed my husband was in a really bad mood, but with me about to be late for work, I didn't get a chance to ask about it. I made it to work on time, thankfully. However, something hit me when I got there. The intense attraction I had for Jeff had just vanished into thin air. Sure, he was still attractive, but that overwhelming crush was gone. It felt like it had evaporated, and I even felt guilty about cheating on my husband with him. Despite that, we were still friendly, bantering and chatting. He still made sure to bring me coffee and lunch, and the day carried on as usual. What seemed like a decent day took a nosedive when I got home. Parked in the driveway, came down from the car, and bam, there were my things on the porch. My clothes, my stuff, just laid out there. I was beyond confused. Why were my belongings outside? Attempted to use the spare key to get in since it seemed my husband wasn't home. But shocker, the key wasn't working. My husband had changed the locks. I attempted to reach him through calls, knocks on the window and door, and a barrage of texts, but it was evident he wasn't home. After about 30 minutes of standing on the porch with my things, I finally received a message from my husband. In it, he revealed that he knew about my one-night stand with my coworker and made it clear that I was no longer welcome in our home. He instructed me to gather my things and leave. The shock hit me like a freight train. It felt like everything crashed into my brain at once, and tears started streaming down my face. My husband knew, and he had been acting like he didn't. I tried calling him repeatedly, but he refused to answer. Instead, he sent me screenshots of the conversation between the coworker and me, telling me to exit his life. He called me a betrayer, expressing that he would never forgive me. He said I disgusted him and wanted nothing to do with me. He made it clear that divorce was inevitable. He accused me of lying to him. He told me that he knew about my attraction to the coworker even before the one-night stand. I couldn't hold back the tears. If he had known about my feelings for the coworker, why did he allow me to go through with it? It all hit me like a tidal wave of surprise. I had been excited to get back home to unwind after work, and now it has turned into getting kicked out of my own home. After 10 years, my husband was tossing everything aside, all because I had a one-night stand with a coworker I was attracted to. The sadness mingled with anger. Why did he let me go through with it? I continued crying, and my tears flowed even more freely. As I packed up my belongings, I realized there was nothing I could do. So I headed to my parents' house, hoping they could intervene and persuade my husband to let me back into his life. As I packed my belongings, tossed them into the car, and headed to my parents' house, a lingering hope clung to the idea that I could explain things before my husband reached out to them. Unfortunately, he beat me to it. Before I even arrived, my phone erupted with calls and messages. Curious, I checked my phone only to discover my husband had executed the classic exposé move. He created a group chat, adding me, all my friends, my parents, his parents, and even all my siblings and his siblings, then proceeded to post the screenshots of my conversation with Jeff. I was beyond frustrated. My phone was blowing up with messages from my husband's family, calling me a cheater, betrayer, disloyal, and tossing around all sorts of insults. It got so overwhelming that I had to switch off my phone to escape the sadness those messages brought. When I finally got to my parents' place, they naturally wanted to know what went down. They couldn't kick out their own kid, but they were pretty mad. They scolded me for wrecking my marriage over a fling, putting all the blame on me. I didn't mind though, at least I had a roof over my head. I crashed at my parents' place for a few days to cool off. Following their suggestion, they had suggested I rest for a few days and give my husband time to cool down. After a few days, my parents, my siblings, and I decided to face my husband and stage an intervention. Even though he wasn't thrilled to see us, he let us in out of respect for my parents. We had some drinks, and then the real talk began. My parents apologized for my screw-up, letting him know I felt genuinely sorry. They spun a story about the coworker supposedly seducing me and how it wasn't really my fault, but my husband wasn't hearing any of it. My husband wasn't buying their story. He pretty much kicked all of us out, threatening to do it himself if we didn't leave. He made it clear that divorce was inevitable, and the papers would be ready in a few days. Despite my attempts to cry and plead, it didn't sway him. We were all ushered out, back to square one. It felt like everything happened in a blink. How did I go from a seemingly happy marriage to crashing at my parents' house? It all unfolded so fast, without even a chance to catch a break. I really wish my husband had confronted me when he first saw the text messages. Why did he let me proceed with the one-night stand? If he had found out sooner, maybe we could have fixed things, but now we were on the path to divorce. I started blaming Jeff for everything. I was content in my marriage until he entered the picture.